parents crowned my golden brother king of our auto shop. I walked out, took customers, exposed favoritism, and watched house and business collapse in ruins. My family owns a local auto shop. Walker's Auto has been in the family since my granddad opened it back in the 60s with nothing but a couple of tools and a beat-up Ford. He used to call it his third child. The shop outlasted 2 recessions, a couple of floods, and more family fights than I can count, and through all of it, I was the one under the hoods. Not because I was the heir or the prodigy or anything, just because I didn't have a choice. Since I was 12, I was in that garage. Saturdays, summers, sick days, it didn't matter. My dad didn't believe in rest. I was the designated parts runner, floor sweeper, oil stain scrubber. I learned how to change brake pads before I learned how to shave, and the wild part is, I never complained. I actually loved the work, the smell of grease, the click of a perfect ratchet pull. I was proud of what we built. Except they never included me. From the start, my parents were obsessed with my younger brother, 28, male, Dylan. 2 years younger, same last name, completely different lives. I was the one under the car at 8 a.m. Dylan was still in bed playing Xbox, yelling at his friends through his headset. I once asked my mom why Dylan never had to help. She said, "He's not as responsible as you. You're better at this stuff." Translation, you do all the work because we know you won't fight us on it. They gave him everything. When he flunked out of his first semester of community college, they bought him a used Camaro to boost his confidence. Meanwhile, I was fixing up a 97 Dodge Ram. My granddad gave me a rust bucket, but it was mine. I spent months on that truck, nights after school, weekends after shifts, YouTube tutorials, calling scrapyards looking for the right parts. That truck was more than a car, it was the first thing I ever built on my own. Grandpa Joe used to walk past while I was working on it and say, "This shop's going to be yours one day, kid. You've got grit." That stuck with me. Still does. Then Dylan wrecked it. I was 18. Came home from a shift. The truck wasn't in the driveway. I thought maybe it got towed or I forgot to set the parking brake. Something dumb like that. Nope. Dylan had stolen the keys, took it joyriding to impress some girl, and T-boned a telephone pole, front end crushed, hood buckled, radiator cracked open like a soda can. And you know what my parents said? "Tyler, you should have hidden the keys better. You know your brother's impulsive." I swear, if I had any hope left in that moment, it got flattened like that grill. They didn't make him pay for it, didn't ground him, didn't even make him apologize. I had to clean the truck up myself on my day off, and I still remember my dad muttering that I should be more careful next time, like it was my fault someone else stole my damn car. That's when I knew. They didn't see me as a son. They saw me as a tool, a wrench that walked and talked. Even after all that, I stayed. I kept working at the shop. After Grandpa passed, I stepped up even more. My dad started slipping, getting forgetful, short-tempered. I handled customer calls, ran invoices, taught myself bookkeeping so we wouldn't have to pay some outside firm. Dylan showed up maybe twice a week, and when he did, he just got in the way. One time he stripped a bolt on a customer's wheel hub because he was texting while torquing it. You know how dangerous that is? Could have killed someone. My dad just brushed it off, he's learning. Meanwhile, I was catching heat if I was 5 minutes late grabbing lunch. My dog Max was the only one who ever acted like he saw me. He'd sit by my feet in the back office while I processed payroll, a rescue, half lab, half God knows what, loyal as hell. Every time I started to think maybe I was crazy for staying, I'd look down at him curled up on the mat and think, nah, I'm building something. This will all pay off. It had to, right? Then came Easter. Big family barbecue in our backyard, tables set up, the whole extended clan there, uncles, cousins, people I didn't even recognize. We were doing ribs and burgers, everyone acting like one big, happy crew. And right there in front of everyone, my dad stands up and taps his glass like he's toasting a wedding. "I just want to say how proud I am of Dylan," he starts. "And I'm excited to officially announce that he'll be taking over Walker's Auto. We're passing the torch to the next generation." People clapped. I looked around waiting for someone, anyone, to say something, to look at me and go, "Wait, what about Tyler?" But nope, just fake smiles and forks clinking on plates. I looked at my dad and said, "Are you serious?" He didn't even blink. "You made your choice, son. You chose animals." Nah, I didn't. I chose work. I chose responsibility. I chose to show up. I chose to believe in a promise my grandfather made me every day until the day he died. They just never chose me back. The Monday after that Easter announcement, I still went to the shop. Call it habit, call it stupidity. I'd been doing it for so long. Walking away cold turkey didn't even feel possible. My alarm went off at 6:30 like always. Max followed me to the door, and I drove the same route I'd been driving since I was 16. I didn't even get halfway through my first coffee before I was standing in that same oil-stained parking lot. The thing about working in a family business is you don't just wear one hat. You're the mechanic, the accountant, the janitor, the guy who runs to the parts store because someone forgot to order brake pads. And because it's family, none of that gets you a raise, a bonus, or even a thank you. It's just what you do. That morning, Dad was already in the office with Dylan. They were going over plans for the shop's future. My future apparently didn't make the meeting agenda. Dad didn't even look up when I walked in. Dylan smirked like he'd just been made CEO of Tesla. "Ty, grab the Bay 3 transmission job," Dad said, without so much as a hello. "Yeah, not good morning, not how you doing, not even thanks for still showing up after we just publicly handed your life's work to someone else. Just a barked order like I was the weekend hire. Fine. Whatever. I've always believed work speaks louder than words anyway, so I got to it. The guy's Camry was on the lift within 10 minutes and I was elbow deep in ATF before Dylan even wandered out to the shop floor. He was wearing one of those spotless shop shirts with his name embroidered on it, sleeves rolled up like he was about to do something useful. Spoiler, he didn't. That's how it was every day after Easter. I did the actual work. Dylan played the part. He'd take pictures of himself pretending to work on an engine and post them online like he was the heartbeat of Walker's Auto. Customers who didn't know better ate it up. "Nice to see the next generation stepping up," they'd say. Meanwhile, I was the guy on my knees wrestling with a seized bolt, sweat dripping into my eyes. Jack, my cousin, saw it all. He'd been working part-time at the shop since high school to save for trade school, and he wasn't blind to the favoritism. One slow Tuesday, while we were replacing rotors, he leaned over and said, "Man, if I were you, I'd be gone already." I told him I couldn't just bail. This was still Grandpa Joe's shop in my head, the place he built with his bare hands. I wasn't going to be the one who abandoned it, even if it had already abandoned me. Jack shook his head. "Loyalty's good, Ty, but not to people who wouldn't return it?" I didn't answer, but the words stuck. The favoritism wasn't just at work. It was everywhere. If I came home 5 minutes late for Sunday dinner, Mom would be on me about respecting family time. Dylan could roll in 2 hours late with fast food in his hand and get a laugh. "Traffic must have been bad, huh?" If I borrowed the shop truck for a supply run and forgot to top off the tank, Dad would act like I'd stolen his retirement fund. Dylan could leave the thing on empty for 3 days, and no one said a word. And then there was the smaller betrayal, the one before the big blow-up. A few months after Easter, one of our regulars, Mr. Lewis, brought in his F-150 for brake work. I'd been handling his trucks for years. He trusted me. While I was working on it, Dylan came out and told me Dad wanted me to switch to another job because Dylan needed to get some hands-on time. Translation, let Dylan play with the expensive toy. I didn't love it, but fine. I moved over to the Subaru in Bay 1. Not an hour later, Mr. Lewis is back in the shop, red-faced, saying his truck's brakes were worse than before. Turns out Dylan forgot to torque the caliper bolts properly, and the whole assembly was rattling around. Dad's reaction? He told me it was my fault for not checking Dylan's work before the customer left. Like, I'm supposed to be the unpaid, quality control guy for someone who's supposedly in charge. That night, I went home pissed. Max sat by my feet while I scrolled job listings just to see what was out there, but something in me still couldn't pull the trigger. This was still my place, even if they'd given it to someone else. The work kept piling up. I was running payroll, ordering parts, fixing the actual cars, and training the part-timers. Dylan was doing business development, which, as far as I could tell, meant hanging out in the office and making calls to his buddies about weekend plans. Dad would gush about Dylan's leadership skills while ignoring the fact that every single repair order had my handwriting on it. Mom wasn't any better. She'd stop by the shop with lunch sometimes, always Dylan's favorite subs, never mind if I wanted one. She'd bring him coffee in the mornings, but never asked if I wanted one. Little things, but they add up when it's every damn day. Jack started talking more openly about it. "They're setting you up to get screwed, man," he said one Thursday night when we were closing up. "Dylan's the face. You're the hands. Guess who gets credit when it goes right and who gets blamed when it goes wrong?" I knew he was right, but I still showed up the next morning because that's what I did. One Friday afternoon, Dad called a staff meeting. All 4 of us, me, Dylan, Dad, and Jack, standing in the shop while Dad went over new procedures. Basically, Dylan was getting a raise to reflect his new responsibilities. My pay stayed exactly the same. Jack's too. Jack spoke up, which I'll never forget, "So Dylan gets more for standing around, and me and Ty keep doing the same work for the same money?" Dad gave him that look, the one that says you're about 2 seconds from not having a job. Jack shut up. But the damage was done. I could tell Dylan was loving every second. The next few weeks I noticed Dylan making bigger and bigger mistakes. Ordering the wrong parts, forgetting to bill customers, double booking bays. Every time, Dad found a way to pin it on someone else. Usually me. I stopped correcting him. Why waste the breath? Then came the day that finally nudged me closer to the edge. A supplier came by with a past due notice for almost $15,000 worth of parts. I knew we'd paid our invoices on time. I handled the checks myself. Turns out Dylan had redirected some of the payments to cover his own marketing expenses, which included a bunch of garbage like a neon shop sign we didn't need and branded hats nobody asked for. The worst part? Dad defended him, said he was investing in the shop's image. That night, Jack texted me, "One day you're going to realize you're the only reason that place is still open." I looked at Max, curled up on the couch, and for the first time I started to believe it. People love to throw out, "Why didn't you just leave?" Like it's some magic fix. Easy to say when it's not your blood, your sweat, your fingerprints on every tool. I didn't stay because I was waiting for their approval or hoping they'd suddenly treat me fairly. I stayed because Walker's Auto was still my shop, even if my name wasn't on the papers. Grandpa built it. I grew up in it. Every car that rolled through those bays had probably been touched by my hands at some point. You don't just walk away from that because someone decides your brother should play boss. And yeah, maybe part of it was ego. I wasn't about to hand Dylan the keys and let him drive the place into a ditch without at least trying to keep it alive. If I was going to walk away one day, I wanted it to be on my terms, not because they shoved me out. So I kept showing up. I was there before anyone else. Most mornings, Max would ride shotgun. I'd unlock the doors, turn on the lights, and start checking the day's appointments before the first wrench was lifted. It's not that I wanted to impress Dad or Mom, those days were gone, but customers still trusted me. They'd ask for me by name. Some of these guys had been bringing their cars to the shop since before I was born. If I wasn't there, I knew they'd start going somewhere else, and that would be one more excuse for Dad to say the business was struggling and hand more power to Dylan. The more I worked, the more Dylan strutted. He'd walk in at 10 like he owned the place, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, wearing a jacket that looked like he bought it to stand next to a car, not work on one. He wasn't even pretending to put in effort anymore. He'd talk to customers like he was doing them a favor, then duck back into the office to scroll Instagram. One morning, an old lady came in. Mrs. Grant drove a '98 Corolla that should have been in a museum. Sweet woman, but her car was making this horrible grinding sound. Dylan quoted her for new brakes and a new transmission, like he was trying to pay off the shop's debts in one sale. She looked like she was about to cry. I pulled her aside while he was on the phone and told her it was just the brakes. $300 job, tops. Fixed it myself that afternoon. Of course, Dylan found out. And instead of thanking me for not robbing a customer, he stormed out and told me I undermined his authority. I told him authority is earned, not handed out at a family barbecue. He didn't like that answer. Dad called me into the office later and told me to support Dylan's decisions from now on. I just stared at him and said, "Not if it means screwing people over." Then I walked out. Jack saw it all. One day, while we were stacking tires, he said, "You're basically keeping this place running by yourself." "Yeah," I said. "And that's why I'm still here. Because if I walk, it's over, and I'm not letting Dylan tell people I quit on the family. Not yet." Jack nodded. "Just don't let not yet turn into forever." But staying didn't mean staying quiet. A couple weeks later, I started keeping detailed logs, every job I did, every part I ordered, every repair I fixed after Dylan's screw-ups, not because I thought Dad would suddenly believe me, but because I knew one day this could matter. I also started talking directly to suppliers instead of letting Dylan handle it. That's how I found out he'd been putting orders on credit without telling anyone, running up tabs in the thousands. The first time I brought it up, Dad waved it off. He's learning. Same line I'd heard since Dylan stripped that bolt years ago. But this time, I didn't just take it. I called Dylan out right there in the office. Learning on someone else's dime isn't learning. It's screwing the people who keep bailing you out. He laughed, actually laughed in my face. "You act like this is your shop." I didn't blink. "It's more mine than yours, and you know it." Silence. Dad didn't jump in. Mom wasn't there to smooth things over. Dylan just shook his head and walked away. Customers started noticing the cracks, too. A couple regulars asked quietly if everything was okay, said Dylan seemed distracted, work took longer than it used to. I'd just say we were busy and change the subject. I wasn't about to badmouth my family to outsiders. Then came the clutch job. A guy named Carson brought in his Mustang. Expensive job, but nothing we couldn't handle. I ordered the parts myself. and set aside the next day to do it. I show up that morning and the parts are gone. Turns out Dylan sold the clutch kit to one of his buddies off the books for cash. Good networking. Carson's car sat on the lift for 4 extra days while I reordered everything. And of course, Dad blamed me for not keeping better track of inventory. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Max under my feet and told myself one more big screw-up from him and I'm done. Leaving because I decide it's time, not because I'm tired, not because they want me gone, leaving with my head high and my work spotless. Yeah. Maybe part of me wanted to stick around long enough to watch Dylan fail on his own. Mostly because I wanted everyone to see that without me, the place couldn't run. So I kept working, kept logging, kept my head down when it made sense, and spoke up when it didn't. And I waited, because every empire built on bullshit eventually collapses, and I wasn't going to miss the day this one finally cracked. The big loss came in mid-September, right when business usually picks up before winter. We had a major fleet account with a local construction company, 8 trucks we serviced regularly. That account alone covered almost a third of our monthly revenue. The boss, Mike, always called me directly. Then Dylan decided he wanted to streamline things. He convinced Mike to bring in all 8 trucks at once for a bulk service. Sounds fine on paper, but we didn't have the manpower, space, or parts. I told Dylan straight up it was a bad idea. He waved me off. Relax, I've got it under control. Translation, I'm dumping it on you and disappearing. By Wednesday, we had 4 trucks torn apart, 3 more waiting outside, and regular customers complaining their cars were stuck because the bays were full. Dylan ordered the wrong parts for 2 of the fleet trucks. I had to overnight everything, extra cost. Thursday, Mike came by, saw the chaos, and pulled the plug. Just like that, we lost a $90,000 a year account. I thought maybe this time Dad would see it, but Friday morning, Dad called me into the office. Dylan was leaning in the doorway, smirking. Tyler, Dad started. We took a big hit this week. No kidding, I said. And you know exactly why. Dad's jaw tightened. I don't want attitude. We can't afford that kind of loss without cutting costs. I waited for him to dock Dylan's pay. Instead, he said, we're going to have to hold your salary this month. I laughed because I thought he was joking. You're telling me Dylan tanks a major account and you're taking my paycheck? You're older, Dad said. You can handle it. Dylan's still finding his footing. I stared at him, then at Dylan. You cost us $90,000 a year and you're still getting paid? Dylan shrugged. I'm not the one storming around like a toddler. I stood up slow and calm. All right, if that's how you want to play it, I'll work with it. Dad frowned. What's that supposed to mean? You'll see, I said. Just make sure you remember this day. Then, I went straight to my locker and pulled out my personal tools. The snap-on torque wrenches, specialty sockets, diagnostic scanner I'd saved months for. Every tool that actually made the shop run smoothly. Mine. Paid for in full. Jack noticed while swapping tires in Bay 2. What's going on? They've been bleeding me dry for years, I said, loading my gear into the truck. Now I'm going to make sure they remember exactly what I brought to this place and what happens when I'm gone. Jack just nodded. He knew I wasn't bluffing. Max jumped into the passenger seat like he'd been waiting for this day too. I drove out without looking back. But I already had a plan. I had contacts, customers who trusted me, suppliers who knew I paid on time. All I had to do was pull every thread quietly. First, the regulars. 50 of them saved in my phone. I sent the same simple text, hey, it's Tyler from Walker's, not with the shop anymore, setting up my own thing soon. I'll make sure you're taken care of. No trash talk, just planting the seed. Then the suppliers. I called each rep personally. Everyone gave me their cell and said call anytime. I rented a small 2-bay garage from a retired mechanic. Cheap rent, 1 lift, corner office for Max. Started slow, brake jobs, tires, small stuff. The regulars came, word spread. I was booked 2 weeks out within a month. And without me there to fix Dylan's mistakes quietly, every screw-up went public. Bad reviews piled up. He argued with customers instead of fixing problems. Jack kept me updated, unpaid bills, missed deadlines, more customers walking out. 3 months in, one of our biggest fleet accounts, a landscaping company worth $60,000 a year, called me directly. I took them, but only if they made a clean break from Walker's. They did, no hesitation. By month 5, my garage was running full tilt. I'd hired 1 part-timer and was looking at a second lift. Almost every major account Walker's had was now mine or shopping around. Then I sent the logs I'd kept, every mistake, every redo, every invoice, compiled into a clean PDF to the bank that held their business loan and the insurance company. No accusations. Just thought you should be aware of ongoing management issues. 2 weeks later, Jack called laughing. The bank froze their line of credit. Insurance demanded a full audit. Mom was losing it. Dylan blaming suppliers. Dad blaming the economy. I just patted Max on the head and went back to work. The best revenge isn't a big scene. It's a slow bleed, taking away what they took for granted, one piece at a time, until all that's left is the mess they made themselves. By the time Walker's Auto was on its last legs, I didn't have to do anything more. Customers gone, suppliers done, bank watching every move. Then the calls started. First, Mom, things are rough right now. Maybe come talk to your father. Translation, fix Dylan's mess without admitting it's his mess. Then Dad, we're losing customers because you took them, not because Dylan couldn't do the job, just blaming me. A week later, Jack texted, swing by the shop today, just for the view. I drove past. Lot half empty, weeds in the cracks, one bay door stuck halfway open. Looked abandoned. 2 days later, they showed up at my shop. Mom, Dad, and Dylan standing in my parking lot like it was an intervention. Dad started, "We're in trouble, Tyler. The bank's breathing down our necks. Without your help, Walker's is going to close." Mom, soft voice. "Honey, this is your family's legacy. You can't just watch it disappear. We need you back, just until things are stable." Dylan, smirking, "Yeah, and we can make it work without all the drama." I asked, "What exactly are you offering?" "Dad, bring your customers back. Work at least 60 hours a week for the next few months. No pay until we're in the black. Then we'll talk fair." They were standing in front of my successful shop telling me to abandon it to bail them out. For free. I looked at Dylan. "You ran the place into the ground and still think I'd come back so you can keep playing boss?" "Mom, this isn't about Dylan. It's about family." "No," I said. "This has always been about Dylan, and you made your choice a long time ago." Dylan rolled his eyes. "You act like you're some genius. You just fix cars. Anybody can do that." "If anybody could do it," I said, "the shop wouldn't be dying right now." I looked at Dad. "You remember the day you held my paycheck to cover Dylan's losses? That was the day I decided. I'd never need you again. You wanted Dylan to carry the legacy. Let him carry it." I turned, walked back inside, and locked the door. Max sat at my feet, tail wagging like it was finally over. It was. By the end of the month, Walker's Auto was closed for renovations. 2 months later, the sign was gone, replaced by a for lease banner. The bank took their house. They moved into a rundown rental. Dad does odd jobs out of a rusty pickup. Mom works cashier. Dylan sits at home scrolling job sites. No one will hire him. Customers now bring me their keys and say, "Wish we'd come to you sooner." I never gloat. I just do the work. Because in the end, I didn't destroy Walker's Auto. I just stopped saving it.